In this episode, Golden and I discuss Season 2 of The Umbrella Academy. Full speed ahead. Welcome to the Omega Beam number 89. I'm your host, Oren Merton. I hope you're all healthy and well. So if you didn't already know, Season 2 of Netflix's The Umbrella Academy dropped recently, and we binged all 10 episodes. Needless to say, we kind of liked it, and we managed to talk about this season with only light spoilers. So if you finished it like we have, or you are debating if you should watch it, or you're halfway through, either way, you're covered. So let's go. I am here with Golden to talk about Season 2 of The Umbrella Academy. So what did you think?
I think I thought basically the same thing that you did. We sat down on a Friday afternoon to watch the first episode, and immediately I think we both had the same opinion that this was better than anything in Season 1. And I was ready to watch the next one.
Yeah.
Which happened. And then the third. And I think they ended up binging the entire thing the next day.
Yeah. The next day we watched the rest of the series. And normally we don't spend an entire day just watching TV. But this
I do think that's probably why I haven't encouraged us to start watching
Doom Patrol?
Doom Patrol Season 2 yet, is because I have a feeling I'm going to either want to binge it or be very sad that I can't watch the entire season.
Could be. Yeah, so we did do the Umbrella Academy Season 1 on the Omega Beam, and if you go back and listen, you'll hear that my opinion was that I really liked the plot, that I thought the story was really interesting and went in a lot of directions I wasn't necessarily expecting, and I enjoyed that. But the characters never really set fire to me. I just never really got into the characters. I think what we both, but especially considering my opinion last time, thought was
I think for Season 1, you weren't really even sure after watching like 2 episodes.
Yeah.
You wanted to continue.
Not at all. Whereas with this one, from the first episode on, I cared about the characters.
From the first few minutes of the first episode, it was...
Yeah, I think the difference in the characters is that Season 1... they're all sort of dysfunctional jerks, and none of them are satisfied with the lives that they'd been given or where they are. And even by the end of it, there wasn't really an arc. It's not like they began, bitter and miserable about their pasts, but made the best of it. They sort of ended where they began. And so I never really was that excited about the characters, even as the story began to suck me in. But from the first second, when they're dropped into this new timeline, they have this attitude of, okay, well, I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to live a life. And that immediately...
They don't really have a choice because they think they're alone.
Right. And that immediately sucked me in.
By the way, there will be probably light spoilers, just letting you know.
That's true. We are going to have to do some light spoilers here, but we're not going to give away any great endings or whatever. But I completely agree that they had no choice, but they lived up to it. An example is for almost all of Season 1, Vanya was this really plain character who never really got excited and never really wanted anything. And in this one, from literally the moment she drops into this world without her memory, I mean, she drops in with memories, but they're wiped away pretty quickly and she gets amnesia. And she just tries to build a life for herself, and it's beautiful. It's one of the beautiful, subplots.
She falls into a caring environment that she hasn't had before.
Exactly. And her story is beautiful. It is really beautiful. Also, the way that her family deals with her when they all do finally meet up is beautiful.
Yeah, I think that, it kind of goes a certain way and you're like, really? Again? And then it kind of turns and is something, like you said, that ends up being more beautiful. And Ashley still gets them to where they want to go.
Right. Yeah, it does. I said this to you when we were watching it, but in a genre television, I think thanks to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I think was the first, there's in a lot of ongoing television series, there's what they call the big bad of the week. That Buffy had a story that would go through the season, but every episode itself was about there's some major threat that they all have to fight.
And you were saying that you think that these seasons are going to be about them stopping the end of the world each season.
It's what is this seasonal apocalypse? And that they have to end up thwarting it. I did like how in season 2, they threw them back in history, but they also brought history into the story. You know, they brought the Kennedy assassination into it.
And the characters involved with it.
Exactly. And they brought the civil rights movement into it. And I thought that they did it in interesting and engaging ways.
Yeah, you have basically, again, the world is going to end, and of course, the only one that knows of it is,
of course, Five.
Yeah. So
the time traveling young one.
When he goes to Luthor, and Luthor's had it. He's like, no, I'm just going to stay at my job.
Right.
Now, you find out later who he's working for.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing the history of that person.
Right.
Well, his job was not going to be around for very much longer anyway.
Yeah, very true. As you were talking about the the sort of elements that come into every season. First season had Hazel and Cha-Cha as kind of the wacky assassins sent after the Umbrella Academy. So this time we have the Swedes as the wacky assassins who are sent after the Umbrella Academy. So I think that's another element that may be a recurring element. And it adds a sense of humor and it adds a sense of zaniness, but it also plays in to the character arc and the growth, I think, in what turns out to be a really meaningful way, which is something they did in season 1 as well, that Hazel had a really nice arc in how he begins as just a zany, crazy assassin, but ends deciding, no, he's found love in this timeline, and that's more important to him. And this timeline, or in this season, also, the leader of the Swedes, it begins, they're all just zany assassins, but by the end, I mean, he's had a bit of an epiphany. And I think it adds to the whole as well as just being fun and funny.
Yeah, there's definitely enough humor to balance out how serious some of it is. And I like that. There's, you have Vanya who's can't remember who she is. So she's trying to find out who she is.
Yeah.
And I think in season 1, she still never knew who she was.
Right.
And I think she kind of knows more about who she is even before she gets her memories back.
That's a very good point, because in the first season, we discover, a spoiler for season 1, if you haven't seen it, it's not a huge spoiler, but it's a spoiler, that she doesn't, as you said, she doesn't know who she really is. Part of that was the way her father and her family treated her.
Yes.
And set her up to not know who she was. This time, it's not other people sort of gaslighting her and denying her identity. It's a random accident. And so there's this feeling that her not knowing who she is less sinister in this one.
And I think part of it is that she finds that it doesn't have to be end of world all the time.
Right.
And that's addressed in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think she has a moment with Ben where they get to actually talk about why is it that everyone else has such a good control over their powers and yet she does not.
Right.
And when it's addressed, it's like, yeah, well, duh, that makes so much sense.
Right.
And each of the characters have this wonderful storyline that eventually just weaves itself so well together like a beautiful tapestry.
Yeah.
I mean, Klaus is Klaus, and and Klaus is just you have to expect something wild and crazy and zany, and Klaus is the one that's going to fall into the bucket of gold just because he happens to trip it over it.
And speaking of Klaus, the one thing that he brought from season 1 is Ben. And Ben was in season 1, Ben didn't do very much till the climax. He was mostly just around to sort of be Klaus's conscience. And he still is this time, but he has a lot more to do. And I really liked how Ben, even though he's dead and a ghost that for the majority of the story, only Klaus can deal with.
Ghosts have needs too.
They do. And I thought they found a really, really cool way to bring Ben into almost every episode. And I think the family is better for it. I think the show is better for it.
Yeah, you have Diego, and like we were saying, there's a serious, and Diego is so serious.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up in the insane asylum.
Right.
And Lila has attached herself to him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this person that is like zany and just so annoying and won't leave him alone. And just kind of working her way in. Because she's interesting.
She is
and he needs that in his life. She needs him because that's the only way to get out. But he also needs her.
Right.
And I think that's a really nice juxtaposition that happens between those two characters and drawing them in.
Yeah, he even starts out by saying, I work alone, like intimacy and getting to know people. It's not something he can deal with. But then after a lot of episodes, he truly cares for Lila. And it's vice versa.
And we should say
mutual.
that neither one of us has actually read the comics.
Right.
So for a lot of the things that other people were like, oh yeah, I already knew that about Reginald Hargreaves, we didn't.
Right.
But I don't know that it was really that much of a surprise because it kind of made sense in the end. But you had this really interesting, like they pull in, there's a picture of a man with an umbrella on the lawn at the JFK John F. Kennedy assassination.
Right, which we learned later was actually historic.
There is actually a picture of a man with an umbrella, which I thought was nice. And I think that the fact that series are actually looking at history and what happened and bringing that in, I know a lot of us are thankful to Watchmen,
right,
for making us aware of the Tulsa massacres, because for a lot of us, we weren't taught that in school.
No, it's certainly not in your standard middle school history book.
And I think a lot of these TV shows that are bringing aspects of history that we may not have ever heard of,
right,
and putting them in there makes us, I'm going to Google that real quick. Was that real?
Exactly.
And I think that that's a really wonderful way to use the medium.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We should also mention that to the surprise of absolutely no one, the end of the series really sets up, or the end of the season really sets up season 3.
Yeah.
It hasn't been officially renewed yet. The first season was renewed a couple months after it dropped. It hasn't been a couple months yet, but there's an expectation.
I would be surprised if it's not renewed.
Well, apparently it's a successful series for Netflix, so there doesn't seem to be any reason why they wouldn't.
Yeah, we haven't talked about number 5, really.
We haven't talked about number 5,
and I have to give props to Aidan Gallagher. He is just absolutely incredible in the role, and I think we listened to something about Umbrella Academy that said that they needed to find the right young actor. Otherwise, they didn't think that they'd be able to pull this off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they did. He is just incredible.
Yeah, it's got to be a demanding role because he is effectively a teenager, a 15 or 16-year-old.
I think he was 15 when they originally began filming.
Right. And the character is supposed to be 15 or 16. However, that's the character's body. That the story is that the character got trapped in the future for 40 years or whatever, 25 years or something, and comes back as a 50-something-year-old man, but in the body of a teenager. So you need to find an actor who can play emotionally and linguistically an adult, even though obviously the actor is the age that he is portraying, or close.
Checking out IMDb right now and some of the information. Apparently, by the age of 8, he was storyboarding and shooting live-action shorts with friends and stop-motion Lego action videos using special effects.
So this is a bright kid.
Yeah.
Clearly a very, very bright young man.
They needed a bright actor to play, what is essentially probably, of the Umbrella Academy kids, probably the smartest one.
Yeah, it is kind of, it is a fun juxtaposition that the visually 16-year-old character among the group of late 20s siblings, that it's that young 16-year-old who, number one, is the emotionally oldest, and number two, or the oldest, even if not chronologically, and number two is the smartest of the bunch and kind of the leader of the group.
And apparently the actor in June of 2018, 2 years ago, made history becoming the youngest United Nations ambassador of all time.
Wow.
After 5 years of working as an ambassador to numerous environmental organizations.
Good for him.
He's a very talented young man. But, usually on the first little page of IMDb, they have the actor's age. Instead, they have 10 paragraphs, or no, it's more than 10, of accomplishments instead.
Is he 18 yet? Has he turned 18 since they started filming?
As I said.
You don't know yet?
It did not have...
Yeah.
Usually that's like right up there. It has his height, but it does not have his age right here on the front page, which normally that's like the first thing they start.
Right.
This is the date and age.
Well, he certainly has a great career ahead of him, and it's nice to know that he is that socially conscious as well. I have great faith in people like him and those who are young and involved in the world. So that's very, very nice to see, and a great show. I mean, this is if like me, you weren't initially attracted to the Umbrella Academy because you didn't know it, but you heard good things and decided to give it a shot. Maybe season 1 interested you. Maybe it was kind of meh. I would say it's worth it. I mean, I would sit through season 1, which was fine and
I would
enjoyable.
sit through season 2 again.
I was going to say season 1 is worth it just for season 2. Because season 1 was interesting, but season 2 was excellent.
And I think that even if you jumped into season 2, you would still be okay because they do just enough of filling in that if you didn't see season 1, it would be okay.
And we should also mention that often when you see a show, there will be a recap when the season begins. The recap of season 1 at the very beginning of season 2.
Well, you should preface this by saying, I wonder if I should skip this.
Right.
And I was like, no, don't skip it. And yeah, like you're saying, they do not do the recap.
Right. It was not a clip show. It was not, and these are scenes from season 1. It was unique and interesting.
Yeah, just in case you missed it. Well, this happened to this person and that happened to that person. And then this happened over here.
Right.
And then over there, this is what happened.
Right. With different interviews and a couple scenes spliced in. It was done in a way that completely fit the mood and tone of the Umbrella Academy. It was unique. And the truth is, it gave you a better idea, in my opinion, of what happened than just a clip show would have.
Yeah, no, it was very well done. And to answer your question, he will be 17 mid-September.
Mid-September. So he is
16 right now.
So yeah, we read something interesting. Or no, we heard it on a YouTube video. Yeah. Something interesting that because he is under 18, guild or whatever rules are that
working with children.
Yeah, they cannot have a live gun on set when he is there. So every time there's shooting, it's actually his double. It's not him.
Or it's put in later or
or post-production, whatever. So whenever you've seen a gun on the table and he's around, it's a toy. It's not an actual or replica, whatever they kind of prop.
Yeah, no, in terms of was it successful, I think that season 2 of Umbrella Academy, I think of the series that I've watched this year, it was probably one of the best.
I would agree with that. It was definitely worth the wait.
Season 2 of Doom Patrol yet.
I know.
I'm a little biased there, though.
I've heard good things. That's going to be definitely next.
Why we haven't started it
exactly.
yet.
Well, it just ended. I believe this week's new Doom Patrol is the finale. So I believe that means now
I can watch
safe.
it now.
Exactly. Now it's safe to binge. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Umbrella Academy season 2 was really something special.
Yeah, visually beautiful. The effects are awesome. The storyline is awesome. all of the characters and actors.
Mm-hmm.
You really feel for them and you get to really make an emotional connection with them.
Yeah.
And honestly, it seemed like there were a lot more episodes than there were because there was so much.
Yeah,
there.
They pack each episode. And that's tough. It's tough to create an episode so packed with storylines, details, information, action, but also have slow moments where characters are allowed to just sort of emote. And there are those moments, especially with Vanya, where she is allowed, she and the people in the house that she's living with, they're slow scenes where things are allowed to just sort of move at their own pace. And maybe that's why we also like the episode so much, that it's not go, 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 that it is, these packed moments, but then everything slows down for an emotional character beat. So I think that definitely is another thing that we liked about this season. And the music was good. Again, you talked about the visuals, which were great. I thought the soundtrack is really good for Umbrella Academy as well. It's all part of it. They picked a lot of songs, a lot of American rock and roll songs, but also just the score, I think, got the mood as well.
Yeah. So. No, there were times that I remember turning to you and thinking, this music is just perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't have to be from that era.
Mm-hmm.
They got the music right. It doesn't make the scene like nice and smooth. It just adds to it.
Right. I am looking forward to season 3. I'm hoping that it gets. I'm pretty certain it's going to get renewed. I'm looking forward to it. And after season 1, I was like, all right, season 2, whatever. But now after season 2, I'm like, okay, yeah.
It should be interesting considering how this season ended.
Yeah, definitely. They certainly, they left season 1 on a cliffhanger, but it was the kind of cliffhanger that would also have been a fine series ending.
The only thing that season 2 did not answer for me, unless I missed it,
mm-hmm.
the person that Mom is based on.
Right. What happens with her? Yeah.
Yep.
That's interesting. We'll have to see.
Yeah, that I thought was very interesting.
Yeah. Definitely.
But you get to find out more about Pogo.
Oh yeah, everybody. You get to find out more about everybody. It's really at first when the season begins, it's sort of random, like why are we in the early 60s? But by the time it's over, you realize, not just for the history, not just because it was a place they thought they could, put an apocalypse, but it tells you something valuable about all the other principles that we learned about along the way. And it's just everything is woven together incredibly well.
Yeah, and you have like Allison, who's dropped in this time period, Black, and literally unable to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that, a lot of times people in that time period didn't have as much of a voice, and she doesn't even have the voice at all.
Right. We see her literally and metaphorically find her voice.
Yes.
Yeah. So very, very good season. Highly recommended. If you haven't been watching Umbrella Academy, the recap at the beginning of season 2 is probably enough. It'll be worth it. Trust us.
Definitely.
Thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/89. If you liked this episode, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help people who like this stuff find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.